Very good, thank you.
Good. Right, before we start, do you need a drink or anything?
No, got me coffee. I'm all good for me coffee.
Got my water.
Excellent.
All right, so do you want to just start by introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, okay. Well, my name's Mark. I'm half of Hats Off, Gentleman is Adequate, along with Malcolm Galloway. So my role mainly is as bass player, but then for recording purposes, I play guitar and keyboard, and we're co-producer as well, and co-mixer, and occasional co-songwriter as well. So it's a sort of collaborative effort backwards and forwards between myself and Malcolm.
Perfect. And where are you based?
I'm based in North London, in Enfield, North London. Malcolm's based over in Belsize Park, so not a million miles away from each other. But obviously at the moment, it's pretty hard to see each other. So
yeah,
everything's phone call based, and kind of lots of Dropbox files going backwards and forwards with each other, that sort of thing. Well,
at least technology allows that now, eh?
You know, to be honest, that's the way we write anyway. So we don't really get face to face too much until it comes down to the production stage, and we're sort of going through, you know, bass drum sounds or whatever. The way it usually works is Malcolm will send me a rough idea of a song, and then I'll add all my bits to it, whether stick or guitar.
Hold on, you're breaking up a little bit there.
So that's the way it normally works. So, you know, lockdown for us in terms of a working method is the same as it's always been.
Oh, perfect then.
Yeah.
And how did it all begin for you two then?
Well, we're old school friends. We've known each other since secondary school, basically. So first school band sort of territory, doing sort of Queen and Iron Maiden covers. And then,
wow.
Yeah. So we've known each other since we're sort of 11, 12 years old, you know. Played guitar and bass at school. Did a few sort of school gigs, you know, that sort of thing. And then Malcolm went and became, you know, a medical professional, doing doctoring sort of stuff. And I kind of went into guitar retail, you know, working in Denmark Street and doing all that sort of malarkey. So we didn't get together. I mean, yeah, we always saw each other as friends, all the time, especially. But the music got sidelined a bit. And then Hats Off started. It was a solo project of Malcolm's, and he started doing open mic nights after not really doing much playing for years and years, and putting it on the back burner. And I went along to a couple of them in Islington, and kind of, you know, thought, oh, we'll come down and play a bit of bass maybe, you know, join in some Bob Dylan covers or whatever. And from then it sort of started escalating. I mean, the first album is basically him by himself. And so by the third album, I'd maybe added a couple of bits of bass tracks, and then it sort of escalated from there. We started co-writing, and now we're just doing it, the two of us. But there was a stage where Hats Off was 5 people, maybe. I think it was 5 or 6 people. We had a drummer, another guitar player as well, or 2 guitar players at one point, and also Malcolm's wife, Catherine, plays flute. And so she stayed with us. And so
videos.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so she plays flute on all our releases as well, and she's doing the odd bit of vocals now and again now as well. So when we go out gigging, it's sometimes 2 of us. Occasionally Catherine, if we can convince her. So the bigger gigs we've done, when we did sort of Shepherd's Bush last year, played O2 Shepherd's Bush, which was fantastic for us. Yeah, really, really cool. We opened up HRH Prog Festival. Just the 3 of us went on the stage at Shepherd's Bush, and it was like, it was a blast. It was really cool. So we were meant to be back there this year, but obviously things changed. So the next big gig we've got is going to be next year in April, because HRH Prog has been rescheduled for Leeds O2 Academy next year. So that's not bad. You know, I've never played Leeds. I'm looking forward to that.
It's good that they started rebooking stuff now. I was getting a bit worried.
Yeah, I mean, April, is that even too kind of soon? I'm not too sure. I mean, there's actually another band that I play as well. I'm actually in another band called It, and we've got a gig potentially booked for December 6th, which is literally next Sunday. So we'll see what happens on Thursday as to what the restrictions are and how it works in terms of the tier system again. But it's going to be a socially distanced one-day prog festival up in Stourport, near Birmingham. So hopefully it's going ahead.
Originally, so
okay, yeah. Well, it's Stourport Civic Centre, which again I've played there before with Malcolm as a promoter called Steve Gould. He's really cool and he's sort of really supportive. Just that sort of scene as well, the prog scene. It's kind of a lot of bands know each other and everyone really gets on. So he's got all the things in place for it to go ahead, if it's allowed to go ahead. So you know,
fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, hope so.
I do have to ask though, the name.
Yes, it comes up a lot.
Yeah.
It comes up a lot.
It caught my attention, mind.
Well, it does. I mean, that's the good thing about it. It doesn't exactly trip off the tongue, but if you're going to do a search for our band name, we're the only band with that name that comes up pretty much. So, you know, it's easy to find. It's an idea of Malcolm's. It's a quote that was attributed to either Strauss or some other kind of composer about another composer saying how fantastic he was and, oh, hats off, gentlemen, he's fantastic. And everyone throwing their sort of top hats in the air. These Victorian gents throwing their top hats in the air. So being sort of very deprecating and kind of English about it, we thought, let's make it adequate. So this idea of everyone sort of celebrating something that's very, very normal and kind of, not fantastic.
It's great. It is great. It caught my attention straight away.
Well, also, the name doesn't really suggest anything either. It doesn't lead you down a certain road of, oh, they're going to sound like that or they're going to sound like this, which is handy.
Which leads me on to the next question. Like, I know it's hard to classify your music.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of everything, to be honest.
But well, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
what were you aiming for, should I say?
Well, between the two of us, we've got such a massive selection of influences. I mean, Malcolm's also very classically influenced as well. And he also writes a lot of minimalist classical music on the side. That's his other project he does. So he's very influenced by people like Steve Reich and kind of Glass and people like that, and very repetitive sort of minimalist sort of music. But then we've got the classic prog stuff, like we've got the Floyd bits, and we've got Marillion is a really big touchstone for both of us. But then, you know, I'm into kind of a massive sort of Factory Head and sort of, you know, Joy Division and New Order and kind of all those sort of bands, early 80s post-punk stuff, massive Kate Bush fan, you know, all of Peter Gabriel's solo albums, that sort of thing. So, you know, Bowie, but loads of stuff, you know, Queens of the Stone Age, whatever. You know, it's all good. So when we write a song, we don't ever think, oh, let's write a song like these people or that. It's either going to be a fast one or a slow one, or an up one or a down one, and then we'll sort of go from there, really. Brilliant.
You mentioned briefly before that you were in another band.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that one.
Yeah, that band's called It. They've been going for a while as well. The guitar player I know from Denmark Street, basically from working in Denmark Street. He used to work in one of the other shops, and their bass player left. And this is whilst I was doing Hats Off. And he said, oh, you know, do you fancy being in 2 bands at once? I was like, well, yeah, because I've often been in 2 or 3 bands at once ever since I've been playing, because that's a lot of a bass player, I think, you know. It's not like guitar players who are 10 a penny. I think if you're half decent on bass, you can kind of fit into different scenarios. And that's a proper full, you know, 4-piece live band with a drummer. So it gets me back into playing in a room loud with a drummer. And my first gig with them was last year to go and play Prog Dreams 8 Festival over in Holland.
Wow.
That was my first gig. So it's literally overnight ferry from Harwich. And then we went and played Holland, and it got videoed on like 16 HD cameras and multi-sound recording. And so we're just sticking that out now as well on Progressive Gears, the label. and it's yeah, it's a live DVD album package as well. So that sort of band is much more Porcupine Tree, Stephen Wilson-ish, more rocky, again, still with a sort of Marillion edge to it, but also quite political as well. So it's a different thing to Hats Off. So I get to fulfill different things in both bands, really.
And out of both of them bands, which song is your favourite? Which do you enjoy performing the most?
Which song? Wow.
Yeah. Song.
Out of both bands. That's a hard one. Until recently, before I was doing it, there's a song we've got called Laditya in Hats Off, which is about it's about a World War II atrocity, and it's quite intense. Every time we play it, it's a very emotional song. I remember actually we're on the way to a gig in Wales, and Malcolm played me the demo on the train, and I started crying, which wasn't the reaction I thought I was going to have, because he had all the lyrics and everything worked out. And so every time we play it live, we sort of look at each other and we know it's going to get quite emotionally intense. And so that's always been a favourite to play live. And it goes down well as well, even though it's quite dark subject matter, it goes down well with the audience. Because, you know, the live setup with Hats Off is myself and Malcolm playing our instruments live and singing live, but we're playing to our own backing tracks because we haven't got a drummer. So what we do is we take out the album, but without us on it, effectively. So, you know, people go, oh, we haven't got a drummer, and we're just playing to backing tracks. It's like, well, hang on, it's us. Yeah. You know, we recorded all that music anyway, and then you still see us two bouncing about like loons, you know, and sweating about on stage and leaving it all on the stage, because, yeah, we do put on a performance. In terms of live songs now, because I'm playing with Tom, who's a drummer in it, and I've actually got a clip, you know, a reaction with a drummer again for the first time, and you get that kind of thing. You look at each other going, well, come on, then you do a little bit and I'll do a little bit, and that sort of thing. We've got a 9-minute song called Path of Least Resistance, which is a tricky one to remember because it's 9 minutes long with a lot of different changes in there, but and it goes through different sections of being quite heavy and then being quiet and that sort of stuff. That's always really good fun to play. But yeah, I'm still sort of, you know, heads down, rock out sort of thing, which I sort of got from my thrash metal days, I think, when I was first learning to play bass, you know, listening to Big Three and kind of, you know, Steve Harrison, doing that sort of thing, you know.
Get lost in the music, don't you?
I do, actually. People say this when they come and see a show with you know, myself and Malcolm. We're quite unassuming, mild-mannered characters off stage. And then you see us play, and it's kind of this intensity comes from somewhere, and we just kind of yeah, we do like to play live, definitely. That's the one thing I think both of us have missed this year, is just the interaction with people live. You know, and I think every musician will say that, quite frankly, this year. I think I was going to say that. You know, we've been doing lockdown videos and things like that. Especially during the first lockdown, we had the gorgeous weather, actually. We're quite lucky to have that weather. And so, you know, we did some of our songs. You know, I'd go and sit in the garden and video my bits on my camera and then send them to Malcolm so he could amalgamate it. And so we could have like these lockdown videos like a lot of bands had, you know. But it wasn't the same as just actually seeing a person and playing it to a person, one-to-one, you know. And whether that's a big venue or I'm playing to 3 people, I don't care. I'll give the same performance every time anyway. So
I think it's important though, isn't it, for that audience interaction. I've seen a lot of bands perform live, like doing the live streams and stuff during lockdown. Yeah. Things like that, but it's not the same. Like, I don't get the same energy. They don't have the same energy, you know? Yeah.
I saw a really interesting interview the other day with Simon Neil from Biffy Clyro. Yeah. Who I think are wicked band, and again, they're one of those bands that you see them live, and it's another level of, you know, what they do. And they did a videoed streamed gig at Barrowlands in Glasgow, and he said it was weird just not having the crowd there. I didn't need to face the front, so I wasn't playing to anyone, so we could actually have cameras going around us, and we could think about the performance in a different way. And so he's saying he thinks the way it's going to go now is to maybe incorporate those gigs and keep those gigs still going on, even when we can go back to seeing live gigs. You know, maybe have an end of a tour thing where you have a filmed gig with a special kind of scenario or a special set or something. And it's good for people who obviously can't get there and people from overseas and those sort of things. So I don't think these streamed gigs are now going to go away when everything goes back to a kind of normality. You know, it's just going to be another way of presenting your music.
Yeah. That's it. So you've had a few live performances yourself.
Yeah.
So is there any that actually stand out for you that have had a major impact on you?
The first one that we did with Hats Off, which was, again, I keep mentioning HRH Prague, but they really were a big step up for us because we went and played a festival in Wales last minute because a band was going to play there and their drummer broke his arm. And because we haven't got a drummer and we're all pretty much self-contained, it's like us and the laptop and a couple of suitcases. They're like, look, can you come down tomorrow? And we're like, yep, we can come. You know, we're rehearsed anyway, we can come. And so we went down there and it was this huge venue, you know, and walk in, there's 2 stages. We're thinking, oh, great, it's going to be on stage 2, you know, the smaller stage. Because I think I'd seen Rival Sons play the night before on the big stage. I said to Malcolm, oh, would it be great if we could play that stage over there? You know, he goes, yeah, whatever, yeah. So next day we go across to stage 2, we about to set up our gear. The guy's like, what are you doing? Because, well, we're playing. He goes, no, you're playing over there. Back in the big room. And so we had no time to feel nervous or anything like that. It was literally like 10 minutes till showtime. Quick, go, plug in, play, go. And the reaction was just brilliant. And when you get to play through a big PA, through a big hired bass amp, and the floors vibrating, everything just sounds great. It's one of those things you don't even think about it, you're just doing it, you know. So in terms of, I think, of especially if our confidence levels going out with just the 2 of us and a laptop, I think for our confidence levels and for the audience reaction to it, it was like, this is viable, we can do this. You know, people aren't expecting to see a 3rd member doing that behind the drum kit. You know? And so ever since then, it's been fine. Yeah, so that was the one that really stood out, you know.
Brilliant. So we mentioned a bit before, like your songs all tell a story.
Yes.
So what comes first? Does the story come first or the music?
I think the story generally comes first. Again, this is more from Malcolm, because Malcolm, the ones with lyrics, this sounds quite obvious, but the ones with lyrics, the story would generally comes first. The instrumental ones can work either way, but the ones with lyrics, he'll always have a kind of idea of something to write about. So it's either something personal. So, you know, one of the tunes on Nostalgia is a song called Arc, which is the more classical piece on there. It's almost like a kind of mini symphony thing. And it's about his grandfather's experience in World War II on the Ark Royal, the aircraft carrier. And because he was given his old logbooks, basically, from his father. So he's got his old logbooks, you know, from 1942, when they're just waiting there for something to happen and kind of all these sea battles going on. So we thought we'd make a sort of story from that. But what we generally do per album, or what we've done for the last 3 albums, is have a kind of overall concept for an album and then have songs that fit in there. So it's not a narrative concept as such. So the last album, Nostalgia for Infinity, is it's the fragility of human civilization. So whether that's war or disease or kind of, yeah, do you know what? We've had a few interviews. This came out in February this year, and we planned to do an album launch, and we were literally going to drop it and do an album launch. We were chatting to the guys down at the British Space Agency, basically, because I managed to get some. If you got the hard copy of the album, some of the photos inside are basically taken from this. It's the British Interplanetary Society, so it's like our version of NASA. and they've got lots of so they got lots of sort of photos of 50 spaceships and kind of what things are going to be like in the future, you know. But they have a headquarters in Waterloo, and we were going to do an album launch there. I emailed the guy down there, and he was well up for doing it, and we could use their photos with permission, all this sort of thing. So, you know, and so we're going to do that. And of course, it didn't happen. It didn't happen, basically. But yeah, that the overall concept is about human fragility. And there's a song there called Sixth Extinction, which is about, obviously, you know, the planet going to die at some point. And then COVID came along, and everyone's going, you must have foreseen this coming. We're like, no, not at all. No idea. But it's just another thing that fits in with the theme of the album. It's like kind of, you know, we sort of soldier on regardless, thinking we're invincible, and we're not at all.
I think it's good though that you can adapt the stories for that. You know, obviously it's good for COVID to explain it and stuff, but you could do that with anything. I think that's a really important thing to have.
Yeah.
Music.
Yeah, I mean, some of the songs are quite on the nose. So, like, you know, Sixth Extinction is about the extinction of the planet, but a lot of them are left open to interpretation. So, if people want to read things into it, then that's fair enough. I mean, yeah, the middle section, and the reason why it's called Nostalgia for Infinity, the middle section of the album is a sort of series of interlinked songs, which is inspired by sci-fi authors' books. Who we really, you know, Alistair Reynolds, who writes a series of sci-fi books, you know, set in space, and the spacecraft is called Nostalgia for Infinity. So that's where it came from. And so we asked him for permission to use it, and he really liked it and liked the idea of it. And so you know, we went with that basically. So, you know, the album before that was called Out of Mind, and it was about memory loss and how we forget things as humans and kind of push things under the carpet. So again, it was memory related songs, but not about one complete strain. So
I love that. I love the story. I do.
Yeah.
So you are obviously very musical. You play bass and keyboard. Do you have any other hidden talents?
Oh, well, musically, also, the other thing that I did learn to play is the Chapman Stick, which I'm not quite sure if you know what that is.
No, never heard of it.
Stay there. I'll show you. Actually, I've got it in my studio. It's like, basically that.
Whoa.
What it is
That's interesting.
It's a 10-string tapping instrument.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's half bass and half melody, but tuned that way outwards. So if you've ever seen any old sort of 1980s Peter Gabriel stuff, and you've got this guy called Tony Levin on bass, or King Crimson sort of stuff, he's a very, very famous stick player. And so it sounds a bit like a bass, but you also play it like drums because it's very percussive. So, you know, so that sort of stuff. Yeah, but I mean, I came from a cello background. I played cello at school. So, and the idea, I just fancied something different, isn't in terms of to add to playing straightforward bass guitar. Yeah. Well,
it's certainly different.
Yeah. In terms of guitar playing, I mean, I'm not the best guitar player in the world, so my guitar bits on the Hats Off stuff is generally weird noises and backward reverby, shoegazy, atmospheric sort of stuff, and that sort of thing. You know, I'll add in a kind of, rather than a blues scale, I'll just play a sort of like that with loads of feedback, which would become a pad or something underneath a song. So that's my skills. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that was surprising, I will say. I was unexpected.
This will mess with your head. This thing, it really will.
I can just about get on with a guitar, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Got no coordination.
Yeah. Well, I said I'm surrounded by musical instruments. Because I say my main day job is selling musical instruments. I've always been around guitars in guitar shops and pedals and amps and stuff. So it's a busman's holiday for me, you know, and I love it. I absolutely love doing it, you know.
Amazing. So, if you could perform with any band or musician, is there anyone in particular that you would perform
Alive
with?
or dead, or?
Yeah, alive or dead.
Crikey. Perform with them. That's an interesting one. Perform with them. Actually, I've got to say Kate Bush. I've got to say that. I was lucky enough to go to one of those gigs she did. I got tickets for one of the Hammersmith gigs before the Dawn gigs, and it was astounding. It was beyond the gig. It was like theatre or something. It was a, you know, a very, very special thing. And you could tell that band, they were there for like, you know, was it 28 days? You can tell that band were just like absolutely loving every moment of that gig. Because, you know, every time she opens the mouth, it's like, oh, she's doing that again, you know. You could tell they were loving it. Yeah, just inspirational people like that, you know.
Perfect. Right then, so I asked this to all the musicians. We briefly touched on the COVID situation.
Yeah.
But obviously, a lot of people are struggling with their like mental health and stuff during the lockdown, especially people that are on their own and stuff. So I am asking everyone for any advice they may have to try and help them through it.
Oh, crikey. Try and help them through it. Well, I've suffered myself with this, so you know, I don't hide it. Talk to people. I think talk to your friends. Phone someone up. You know, and just phone someone up and say, look, I'm not feeling great today, or kind of, you know, reach out to people. And I think at the moment people are very, very receptive to it now because everyone knows someone who's going through that. It's more advice to give to people about other people, actually, rather than, you know, just phone your mate up and see if he's okay, you know, and say, how was your day today? Or just keep in touch. That's been one of the nice things to come out of this, I think, is people are interacting with each other again because they realise how important it is to actually, you know, not be so distant from each other and actually kind of talk to each other on a one-to-one basis. And not just use social media and stuff. So
it's the old saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, I'm very happy. I've got, you know, a loving family and a, you know, wife and 2 kids and all that sort of thing around me. But I've had bad days during it, especially during the first one. I had a couple of bad days where I just, you know, didn't get out of bed. Quite frankly, I couldn't be bothered. You know, so no one's immune. You know. But I think, yeah, just reach out, you know, make sure someone knows you're there.
I think that's good advice. It is, because I think it's important to know that it can affect everyone.
Yeah.
I think people think, oh, you know, I'm fine and all that, but bam.
Yeah. Especially blokes. But thankfully, I mean, this obviously COVID has brought this into, you know, sharp relief, as it were, but this was being talked about more in a positive way even before, you know, COVID hit. So I think, especially in the last year, maybe a couple of years, but especially in the last year, I think everyone's now much more aware, and it's okay to talk about it now as well. I think, because, you know, it used to be a bit of a kind of like, oh, I'm feeling really down, but I can't tell anyone because what are they going to think about me? It's just, you know, people of our generation and kind of, you know, generations below us now, it's kind of, it's not an issue anymore. It's not a thing you have to, you know, scrub under the carpet. It's just, you know.
It's more in the open. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to you. You've been playing music for a while.
Yeah.
So, if you could go back in time, is there any advice you would give to yourself?
Yeah, practice more than you did anyway. I'm okay. I'm good. You know, I get by, but there's still holes in my playing or my technique where I should have put more hours in, maybe. But, you know, I'm sort of doing that now as well. In the spare time we've had, I've been sort of sort of, you know, starting to read music again and that sort of thing. Which, because both my boys are now, you know, one's playing clarinet and one's playing keyboard, so I'm having to sort of go through the books with them. So I'm actually starting to read, you know, clef again and that sort of stuff, which I haven't done since I played cello at school. So, actually, I was going to say yes to a lot of stuff that comes along musically, but I was always pretty good at that anyway, saying yes to opportunities. You know, don't turn anything down because you don't know what it's going to lead to, you know, or who you're going to meet because of it. So, yeah, I think, yeah, practice. Yeah, practice.
Practice. I think that's good advice for anyone, isn't it?
Yeah. But also, get together with other musicians and play live. You know, that's how you became better, I think. It's actually getting out there and doing it. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid if you mess up a few notes, or if you did what I did and fell off the stage a couple of times, you know, when you were young. Oh yeah, I fell off the stage at the Royal Stand in Walthamstow. It really hurt. You know, it's just a little snapshot of one gig. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to sort of mess up. It's absolutely fine. No one cares. It's just a piece of time.
And then, so what are the plans for the future then?
Well, in terms of Hats Off, we were in the middle of doing album number 6, I think, which is kind of written. It's all done. We have a title. We are finishing off lyrics, and this is the point where we want to get in the room together, because we've hit a brick wall where we can only go so far without actually physically seeing each other face to face. So that'll be coming out probably next year. But in the meantime, because we couldn't stop writing stuff, we've got a 3-track EP coming out, which should be finished next couple of days, actually. I mean, we're literally just sorting out mastering levels now and that sort of thing. And there's no tracks on the album, basically. It's all 3 new songs that Malcolm's written that we basically want to get out there. Because we've always got kind of a locker full of songs that might not make it on the next album, but they might make it 3 albums down the line or something, or be a B-side or something. You know, there's always things to be getting on with musically. You know, the Dropbox is just full of stuff, absolutely full of stuff. In terms of it, then we're going to be promoting the Prog Dreams album, with hopefully some gigs on that, and then some summer gigs. And then I think Nick and Andy from it, we want to start getting into doing a new album with them as well. So looks like I'll be pretty busy, I think.
Busy, yeah.
Yeah,
amazing.
you know.
And before we go, is there any messages you want to share?
Thank you to anyone who still listens and downloads our stuff and comments, and people like yourself, broadcasters, bloggers, interviewers, you know, who sort of help small bands out like us and get us heard. I mean, you know, 20 years ago, there was no way that a band like us would ever get heard, because these channels weren't available, were they? You know, you couldn't just speak to someone on a Zoom call, have an interview, and then get it in a magazine or a fanzine or whatever. I mean, yeah, there's obviously fanzines, you know what I mean? I found out today, just literally through my letterbox today, Prog magazine came to the letterbox, and we've made it to a couple of their critics 2020, you know, best of lists, which is nice. Yeah, for Hats Off, yeah. Yeah, which, considering the album was released at the start of the year, you know, and might have got forgotten about in the great scheme of things, but that's really nice, you know, that we get sort of mentions like, you know, places like that as well. So yeah, thank you to anyone who's still supporting us in buying things, and you know, I think music's been really important this year, isn't it? For you know, for everyone, it's one of those things that you can escape into and sort of get you through sort of the hard times.
That's partly why I do this, to be honest. People love music, and I think it's important to get the story behind the music.
Yeah.
Out there as well. Yeah. Just so you can understand it that little bit more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's great for us. You know, we said, you know, having people like you helps us get our story across, and kind of, you know, you get a bit closer to the artist, shall I say, with very big inverted commas. You know?
You are. All right then, so what I'll do is when I upload this, I'll put all the links to where people can find you, buy your music and stuff like that. If you could just send me the information when the EP is coming out, and we can put that on our website as well.
Will do. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Cheers.